Seahawks Today is presented by Prize Picks. I'm your host, Will Ortner, and I might be officially crazy. Because right now, the biggest story in the National Football League is Brendan Sorsby, and where will he end up? And there is no real reason why the Seahawks should go after him. Except, when you get done watching this video, I think I'm going to convince you of two real reasons why the Seahawks should go and get him. So we have known now for quite some time that Brendan Sorsby, Texas Tech, and the NCAA were kind of going back and forth on whether or not he would end up being eligible. Don't worry if you're not fully locked in on what's going on with Sorsby. We'll make sure that we break down that entire situation. But what's important for you to know right now, of course, is that Sorsby last night made it official when he declared that he was going to enter the NFL supplemental draft. Pete Thamel of ESPN was one of the first people to put this out. I also saw Tom Pelissero a part of that. Now, this is going to end up being a big deal for teams that need a quarterback in the National Football League. Brendan Sorsby was someone that was being talked about as a potential early second, maybe even late first-round quarterback in this draft, and he was certainly a big player, at least expected to be, next year with that quarterback class. We've talked here about Sam Levitt, Dante Moore, and the rest of that crew, Sorsby was included in that are headlining what is supposed to be one of the best drafts of all time in the 2027 NFL Draft. That's why the Seahawks have a bunch of draft capital in that draft. Now, the Seahawks do not need a quarterback. I'm not going to come on here and tell you that Brendan Sorsby has to be taken because he's going to be better than Sam Darnold. He is simply not better than Sam Darnold. I want that abundantly clear at the beginning. The reasons that I'm going to give you for why the Seahawks should go and get him is not because Sam Darnold needs to be moved on from. He just brought the Seahawks a Super Bowl, and I think he's the type of quarterback that can bring the Seahawks another Super Bowl. He is someone who's had a lot of success in the last couple of years of his career, had a lot of success in college. He was set up in a bad situation, multiple bad situations, really, when he first got into the National Football League. But once Sam Darnold got into the type of system that the Seahawks like to run and are going to continue to run, he's shown that he can be very successful. So Sam Darnold is our guy. We are going to be with Sam Darnold for quite some time the rest of the way, and I have no issue with that. That's not what this video is going to be. This is a video about how the Seahawks can take advantage of a situation that they are primed for that could end up leading to big returns for this team. What I mean by this is John Schneider has positioned the Seahawks specifically not only to make moves in free agency and trades right now with the amount of cap space that the Seahawks have, but he's also put them into a position where the Seahawks are going to be able to take advantage of this 2027 NFL draft. The supplemental draft could also lead to being something that the Seahawks take advantage of. Because Schneider, he's built this team in a way that getting a guy like Sorsby is not a make-or-break thing. This is a thing that the Seahawks could, one, use to help the team later on down the road, or the way that I'm going to pitch it, it can be used for the Seahawks to help them right now, or at least a year from right now, where they're trading Brendan Sorsby for some big-time draft capital as well. Would you want the Seahawks to go and get Brendan Sorsby? Are you open to that in the supplemental draft? Let me know down below in the comment section, yes or no, because I'm interested on what you have to say here. I think that this is a very out-of-the-box idea, so I'm not afraid to see a lot of no's. It's kind of why I need to preface this idea before we got into it. Also, if you want to have someone to blame, don't go into my comment section and blame me. Go into John Middlecoff's comment section and blame him. I was listening to the Third and Out podcast today as I was walking into work, and the way that he pitched it, it was more for Howie Roseman and the Eagles, right? The Eagles, they don't need a quarterback. They have Jalen Hurts, but they can go get Sorsby. He could be someone that's developmental, or they could end up moving on from him if they like their backup quarterback situation over there with Tanner McKee. He also said that the Baltimore Ravens were a team that could potentially be interesting with a guy like Brendan Sorsby. That made me start thinking about the Seahawks, so of course it could be the Seahawks. The first thing that the Seahawks could end up doing is flipping Sorsby. What does that mean? What does that entail? Well, it means the Seahawks would end up drafting him and then quickly trading him very quickly. Will teams be wanting to trade for him? I'll let you know here in just a second. But first, I need to let you know that today's show is made possible by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 sports picks app and is the best place to win cash while watching sports. With baseball season in full swing, there's no better time to cash in with our friends at PrizePicks. And I'll tell you this, the app is really easy to use. To qualify for a PrizePicks lineup, pick 2 to 6 players and select more or less on stat projections, including hits, home runs, strikeouts, and several others across all sports. One thing I love is the new social feeds feature, where you can share PrizePicks with your friends and copy lineups with a single click. You can actually follow me on the app, at BigWill7774, to see all of my lineups. I have a lineup for the football action going on later on this year. Jackson Smith-Njigba, more on his receiving yards. Sam Darnold, more on his pass yards. Matthew Stafford, less on his pass yards. New user offer. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to receive $50 in lineups. That's code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to get an extra $50 in lineups with PrizePicks. Clickable link to download the app is in the comments and description. So here's what Pete Thamel had to say when the news immediately broke about Brendan Sorsby, and this is going to detail exactly what has been transpiring before him and why he has become such a major news story. According to sources, Sorsby bet on Indiana football while redshirting for the Hoosiers as a true freshman in 2022, a season in which he played in a single game as a reserve. The bets in 2022, according to sources, were on Indiana to win, and none came in a game which Sorsby appeared. Sorsby's decision to seek treatment for a gambling addiction, according to sources, came in wake of the discovery of Sorsby making thousands of online bets on a variety of sports via gambling app, which jeopardizes his eligibility with Texas Tech. As for his on-field future, the NCAA has a strict policy against any type of gambling on athletes on intercollegiate, amateur, or professional athletic competition, and violators are ineligible for competition subject to appeal. According to the amended NCAA guidelines that came out back in 2023, student athletes who wager on their own games or on other sports at their own schools face permanent loss of collegiate eligibility in all sports. So there's certainly some stink to him. I'm going to be honest with you right there, especially with all the fighting that Texas Tech has done. There's not a lot of love lost right now for Brendan Sorsby. What is important to kind of mention, though, I am thankful that he is able to go and get help because he ended up going to a rehab facility for his gambling addiction. Okay, so he is going to have a little bit of some stink on him, but I think you can look at a guy like Kayshon Boutte, someone who also got in trouble for gambling in college, and say, that guy's in the National Football League right now, so the stink can't be that bad. And Brendan Sorsby, I would say, is a better prospect than a guy like Kayshon Boutte. Because you look at Brendan Sorsby, there are talks and there are beliefs that he could actually end up being someone that is just as talented as a guy by the name of Bo Nix. And Bo Nix, well, he got the Denver Broncos to the AFC Championship game. He probably gets them to the Super Bowl if he doesn't end up getting hurt. Now, when we look at the career for Brendan Sorsby while he was at Cincinnati, this is something that is definitely important for all of us to look at. He's a quality quarterback. He is someone who's got a decent completion percentage, doesn't really turn the ball over all that much, which that's going to be a good thing. Has a high completion percentage, but what I think is important to really look at him is that rushing yards and that athleticism. He is someone that is not afraid to move. He is not afraid to tuck the ball down and run if he needs to. Now, he's a bit of a gambler. That's an honest statement when it comes to how he throws the football, right? He is someone that is not going to be afraid to throw the football into tight windows where a ball could get intercepted. He trusts himself probably a little bit more than he probably should. And I'm not the only one saying that. John Middlecoff was saying that as well. He does a great job of scouting. But we know from a lot of draft experts that Sorsby was someone who would have been a high draft pick this year. He is someone that probably sneaks into the first round, especially once Dante Moore said that he would not enter the draft, but he probably ends up being QB2, maybe QB3. I think that the Seahawks should come in and at least kick the tires on drafting Sorsby in the supplemental draft, so that way they can trade him later on. When you look at a guy like Sorsby, you're going to have an opportunity to get a player who has the potential to be a first-round pick, but because of the supplemental draft and the nature of how teams are going to potentially go after him, the Seahawks would actually be able to get him probably more for a second or a third or even a fourth or a fifth round draft pick. Now, how does the supplemental draft work? The draft order for the supplemental draft is determined via a lottery system based on the previous season's win-loss records. The draft order is divided into 3 groups. There's the teams with 6 or fewer wins, the rest of the non-playoff teams, and the 14 playoff teams. The Seahawks would have the worst odds to move up into the draft, and they would be in a position where they're probably on the back end. So for Seattle, if they were going to take Sorsby, it would probably end up being a second-round pick if he ends up going in the third. A lot of scouts right now, at least on the initial thoughts, they're thinking that Sorsby probably ends up somewhere between the third, fourth, and fifth round for the supplemental draft. There is a world where maybe a team in the second round goes up and goes and gets him. By the way, if you use a second-round pick on Sorsby, you lose your second-round pick in the 2027 draft. Seattle, we've used the supplemental draft before. A man by the name of Brian Bosworth was drafted by the Seahawks in 1987. Now, obviously, that wasn't John Schneider and his crew. And the Boz, well, he really didn't end up panning out, which is a bit unfortunate for him and cool hairstyles of the 1980s. Like I said, Sorsby is someone who projects as a middle-round pick, but we know that with the Seahawks, they have the draft capital to potentially go and make this dream a reality, right? When you look at the Seattle Seahawks, they are a team that actually has the ability to go and snag him where other teams might not. Yeah, a team like the Dolphins might need a QB, but are they willing to risk some of the draft capital that they could use to go and get him when, if he doesn't pan out, you end up losing a really big piece of your program? I got more to talk about on this theory as well as one more, but before we get into any of that, I need to let you know that today's show is also made possible by SeatGeek. When it's time to get out of the house, there's not many better options right now than a ball game. And with SeatGeek being MLB's official ticket marketplace, your tickets are fully guaranteed and instantly fulfilled in your account after purchase. I thought it would be fun to take a look on SeatGeek for some Seahawks tickets, and of course, I'm going to look for that very first game against the Patriots. Now, you know me, I'm looking for the green dots, trying to get the best deal, and I want to be in a position where I can be as close to the action as possible. Whether it's a Seahawks game with a special lady friend or a Co-Wetzel concert with the boys, SeatGeek has your back. Each ticket is rated on a scale of 1 to 10, so you know you're getting a good deal. So look for the green dots. Green means good. Red means bad. And of course, I have a code for you guys. You can use code CHAT10 for 10% off your next set of tickets at SeatGeek. That's 10% off any tickets with the promo code CHAT10. Make sure you click the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account so you can use it later. Thank you, SeatGeek. Now, I'm pitching this from a Seahawks perspective where they're a team that doesn't need a guy like Brendan Sorsby but could be willing to go and get him, where you're hearing a lot of the smoke, a lot of the fire right now about a team that doesn't need a quarterback that's willing to potentially go and get Sorsby. It's the Philadelphia Eagles. Howie Roseman has been someone who's always chasing edges, kind of like we are here in Seattle. And he's not afraid, one, to go and sign players or trade for players that have already had gambling issues. He's done it before with the Philadelphia Eagles. Let the guy take the time where he's suspended and come in and then go play for them. But he's also someone that's not afraid to look at a player and say, hey, there's a low value on him that I can turn into a big value for us. Or you can look at a player like Sorsby and say, hey, Jalen Hurts, maybe he ends up making it a couple more years, and then we develop him into being a starter. This is a perfect opportunity for the Eagles to go and get a player of that ilk at that QB position and really make their team good. I love this idea, but instead of it being the Eagles, I'm stealing from another bird team in the NFL. I say that the Seahawks should do it because I think that the Seahawks could go in. You know you're going to have 12 picks, potentially more, going into this upcoming 2027 NFL draft. You're a team that is loaded. Why not use one of your draft picks? You know you're going to have multiple in the middle rounds, that third, fourth, fifth. If he gets to the fifth round of this supplemental draft, why not put a bid in for him? You know that you're going to get the capital back, and if Sorsby ends up being halfway decent and the 2027 draft comes by and there's a team, I don't know, say the New York Jets, Arizona Cardinals, any of these other teams, probably not the Cardinals, but any of these other teams, they don't get their QB. Well, you've got a QB that you could trade to them for young that they are going to get on the cheap, and you'd be able to get probably a second-round draft pick back, maybe even more. So there's a good ability here to flip, right? My parents love watching a lot of those HGTV shows where they're flipping houses all the time. This feels like a perfect opportunity. It's a great house in a good neighborhood. You just have been neglected a little bit. Go down below in the comment section. This is something that I find interesting. We have the debate every once in a while here at Chat Sports. Who's the best GM in the National Football League? It seems to either be John Schneider or Howie Roseman. Who do you think's the best GM in the NFL? Go in the comment section, type JS for John Schneider, type HR for Howie Roseman. Let me know your opinion. You know who I'm typing for. Sorsby, the other reason that the Seahawks could draft him, he could end up being a developmental prospect here for the Seahawks. When you look at the quarterback room right now in Seattle, yes, I feel pretty good about Drew Lock being the backup to Sam Darnold. Let's be very clear about this. Sam Darnold is our guy. He just won a Super Bowl. We're not moving on from him. But Drew Lock is someone that is a capable backup, but we know what he is. If the Seahawks had to play him for 5 games, your best case scenario is you're going 3-2. More than likely, you're going 2-3 with him, right? That's just what he is. He's going to be a career backup. But Seattle drafted a guy by the name of Jalen Milroe just 2 years ago, or, 2 drafts ago. And the idea behind him was, one, he's a developmental prospect. He's someone that has elite athletic traits, and he is someone that if the Seahawks work through some of the issues that he's had with accuracy and decision-making, well, then he could end up maybe potentially being the successor down the road. Kind of like the Green Bay Packers did with Jordan Love. He was a guy who was very raw talent, and then they gave him 4 or 5 years before he ended up being their starter. You can argue whether that was the right decision or wrong decision, but that is the decision that they've made. And I would make the argument that Packer fans are not all that upset about it. When you look at Jalen Milroe, I would be a bit dismayed to say that the progression hasn't been as fast as maybe we would like. Now, I'm not here saying that I want to sell on Jalen Milroe. If you've been watching the show, you know I'm very high on him. But again, after another mini camp and another OTA session, felt like Jalen Milroe wasn't putting himself in the best position to take over for Drew Lock. He still had some of those interception issues. He's still being used as someone who is very athletic. Now, the Seahawks have been clear they want to use Milroe as an athletic quarterback for this team, especially in the low red zone. But this is an opportunity for the Seahawks to say, well, why not go and get Sorsby and let him duke it out for Jalen Milroe? Because we already went through it. Sorsby's pretty darn athletic too. And he's able to run. He's big. He's strong. He's well over 6'3". Strong, physical kid. Could easily fill into that Jalen Milroe role. Now the Seahawks could go and get him in a supplemental draft, trade Jalen Milroe away, get some draft capital back for him, maybe even get a return on investment depending on where you have to take Sorsby, and you still get that athletic QB that you were talking about using in the low red zone. We also know that Sam Darnold is going to be due an extension soon. And the Seahawks, right now, they do not have any plans of getting that extension worked out during this offseason. We might give you updates from now and again. We might talk about some different articles because ESPN, a couple of the other places, they've talked about him being a extension-worthy QB right now. John Schneider doesn't feel like he wants to do that. Maybe the Seahawks look at Sorsby and they say, well, here's our plan B. If we're not able to re-sign Sam Darnold and get him signed to an extension next year, maybe he decides to move on, well, then we got Brendan Sorsby. And because we got Brendan Sorsby, he'd have essentially 2 years of sitting, learning, developing. He could potentially fix some of the mistakes that he has, maybe take less gambles with the football when he's trying to throw the ball downfield, and he could end up being the starter in Seattle. It's not the worst idea in the world. It's a bit extreme, but I don't think it's that crazy. Now, I know that this is a little bit of a story where I'm out in left field. But hopefully I at least laid out 2 arguments and 2 reasons why you could at least see a feasible world why the Seahawks would take Brendan Sorsby. Do I think that it will happen? Seems like a 1 to 2% chance. But in the words of Dumb and Dumber, in the words of Jim Carrey, so you're saying there's a chance. Hit the thumbs up button if you love the show. Maybe you didn't love this episode, but you'll love the content that we got going out later. We have a video that's going to go out later on tonight or later on this week where I complain about a narrative that the Seahawks are facing right now. Don't miss that video by subscribing to the channel. It's a lot of fun, and you get to see me, get a little bit agitated. Thank you guys so much for viewing today's video. I cannot wait to see you next time. And as always, go tell someone that you love them.